As you can see, I am wearing plaid, which means it's time to talk about Supernatural. In true Supernatural fashion, the show has managed to jump the shark from beyond the grave. I previously shared my very strong opinions about the core concept of the Supernatural prequel series, The Winchesters. The show has run for one season consisting of 13 episodes and airing between October 2022 and March of 2023. The show focused on John Winchester and Mary Campbell falling in love and going on the road hunting monsters, something that directly conflicts with the story told by the original Supernatural series. The show was actually helmed in part by Jensen Ackles, who played Dean Winchester on Supernatural, and who plays Dean Winchester in this show too. Jensen kept telling us that this show would not break the canon as established by Supernatural, and it would all make sense by episode 13. And here we are, episode 13, the Winchesters finale. Turns out I still have very strong and likely very unpopular opinions about this show. So spoilers for the Winchesters finale and for the end of Supernatural, obviously. Throughout the season, we learned that Dean basically kicked things off by giving John a letter from his father, Henry Winchester. And John had previously believed that Henry just abandoned his family, and he held a lot of resentment for that. But the letter explains that Henry is actually dead, and it directs John towards a Men of Letters facility. And this is basically the inciting event that takes everything directly off of the path that was laid out by Supernatural. And now, the Winchesters season finale, episode 13, has explained it all. This show takes place after Dean died in Supernatural, but in an alternate reality. So Dean died in the Supernatural series finale, and then he found himself in heaven, and he started driving around in the Impala to, kill time until Sam died too. But then he took a detour and went to an alternate reality where he apparently decided to take a concrete action and change the alternate past.
Come on, the letter was meant for him. I just, gave it a nudge.
At some ill-defined point along the way, apparently he learned about a new threat and decided to go on one last hunt to save the world.
One last hunt, huh?
One last hunt.
Despite, being dead.
I'm already dead.
He's already dead.
The main enemy of the Winchesters, the Akrita, are creatures that were created by Chuck as a failsafe to destroy all of mankind in every reality in the event that Chuck were ever killed.
The Akrita were made by an angry god. Only thing ever bested him, he had us as a failsafe. We were designed to wipe out all life in every universe.
And since they're a threat to every universe, including the one where Dean's brother Sam is still living out the rest of his days in a bad wig and crying in the Impala in a garage, Dean decides that he is going to step in and help stop the Akrita in this alternate reality.
Eventually, the Akrita were going to make their way to my world. And I got family there, so I couldn't let that happen.
Dean succeeds in helping to destroy the Akrita, although the Impala actually does all the heavy lifting in this situation. But either way, the Akrita are destroyed, and Dean has managed to change the past in this alternate reality so that at least one version of his family has a shot at a happy future, where they don't all die horribly.
I guess I was hoping that somewhere out there was an Earth that had a version where my family had a shot at a happy ending.
It's emotional. It resonates with the audience of Supernatural. And it is also very stupid. They're playing on nostalgia and unresolved feelings from the Supernatural finale to distract you from the fact that this show does not make any sense. One small example in advance of all of the other bigger examples that I'm going to share with you, we see Dean give John Dean's own hunting journal. But it also looks like the same journal that he's writing in at the beginning of the season, where he's writing like about John and Mary as his parents. So did he like rip those pages out? Don't try to trick me with sexy shots of the Impala. I'm on to you, show. And I know this will get downvoted heavily, because after I watched the finale, I went on Twitter because I needed to see what the general fan response was. Because my response was, what the hell did I just watch? And I see that people are loving it. They are weeping tears of joy. And I feel insane because that ending is structurally and narratively bad. It's definitely not what I expected when I was looking at this series before it aired, but that's because I never expected them to just go insane and be like, jump the shark, but what if the shark is the moon and we jump over it on the cow and the dish doesn't run away with the spoon because we are the spoon? Like, I appreciate the attempt to smooth over some of the more unpalatable aspects of the Supernatural finale, so thanks for trying, I guess, but this is so weird. Like, they just went so big that it turned into nonsense. So enough with my frantic hyperbole. Here are the main problems with the Winchesters finale. 1. Not only did Dean travel to a different reality, but he presumably time traveled, which isn't as big of a deal in the grand scheme of heavenly interventions, but it does add an extra layer of convolution when you are trying to figure out what is happening and when. 2. Chuck destroyed all of the alternate realities in season 15 of Supernatural.
All the other worlds, alternate realities, the subplots, the failed spin-offs. It's time to start canceling shows.
It was part of the plot, extending across multiple episodes.
God was destroying their reality. He's almost done wrapping up those other worlds. I just came from one of Chuck's worlds. Watched a whole planet burn alive. I was the last one. The last world, but this world.
We got that great shot of alternate Sam and Dean escaping their dying reality by appearing in the bunker in a Fiat as Savage Garden played in the background. It was amazing.
Anytime I need to see a face, I just close my eyes and I am taken to a place where your crystal mind and magenta feeling take a shelter in the base of my spine, straight like a chicken cherry cola.
3. Dean is dead. How do you just drive out of being dead? I don't think they let souls out of heaven on a day pass. Did he find like a magic flux capacitor and he installed it in the heavenly version of the Impala? And how does he have a physical form? How does the car have a physical form, even when separated from Dean? And how are his hair and beard still growing? When does he change clothes? Does he need to shower? Does he need to eat? Does he need to sleep? The only explanation we get is that he took a detour from heaven.
When I died, I made it to heaven, and she was waiting for me. So I went for a drive, and then I took a little detour.
Through the multiverse.
Oh, the multiverse. Dean's just like, like that explains everything. This scene has so much exposition, many minutes of the characters standing around and listening to Dean talk while asking very specific leading questions, and yet we still know nothing. By the way, where did all the people go that were possessed by the Akrita? Like, they were there and they dropped their weapons and they looked confused, and now suddenly they're just gone. Like, they just wandered off. It's not clear what Dean has actually been doing this whole time. Has he been going back and forth between this alternate Earth and heaven? Has he been driving around just fighting the Akrita this whole time? Earlier in this episode, the Akrita Queen makes some very vague statements.
You see, our mysterious friend isn't from around here. There was only so much he could do. His hands were tied. Credit where it's due, he did manage to stay ahead of me for a while, but...
And apparently, they came into actual physical conflict, and the Akrita Queen banished both Dean and the Impala through a portal.
There's this portal. You see, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's not quite up to code yet, but I managed to pry it open just enough to toss a certain someone and his car into it.
And of course, we don't see this exciting event, we just hear about it through more exposition. I've seen a few comments online from people saying that Dean's comment about being in the world between worlds explains how he was able to come back from the dead because he hadn't fully crossed over.
I was stuck in the world between worlds. So I stayed close to that portal, and as soon as I saw baby come through, I hopped in and grabbed the wheel.
But if you watch that scene and you listen carefully, what he's saying is that after he was banished through the portal, in that specific instance, he ended up in the world between worlds. Like, after he died on a piece of metal in a barn, he went to heaven. And if Dean could just come back from the dead at will, why didn't he go visit Sam, crying in his car? I guess that maybe he didn't want to interfere or whatever, but he interfered a lot in this reality.
Keep an eye out for a yellow-eyed demon.
Also, since Jack shows up at the end and tells Dean that he hadn't wanted any more heavenly interference with humanity, this means that Dean didn't have, god magic backing him up this whole time. This was his own thing.
When I restored things, I wanted mankind to make their own fate. That meant no interference from on high. Anywhere. No exceptions.
It's kind of funny that Jack probably just had the power to destroy the Akrita, just blink him out of existence, but he didn't. He was just gonna let humanity get destroyed. I would not have been surprised if it turned out that Jack was kind of allowing Dean to do this with a wink and a nod, but the way they played it did not seem that way.
I couldn't let our world get destroyed. So if you want to cast me out of heaven, so be it.
4. So the Akrita were one of the last things ever created by Chuck, and they were created as a failsafe to destroy all of humanity in every universe if Chuck were ever killed.
They were one of Chuck's last creations. He left the Akrita behind to wipe out all of existence in case he failed. Well, he failed.
Except it's mentioned that they tried to invade every so often over the course of centuries, and the Men of Letters fought them off.
The Akrita are a malevolent force, a monster not of this world. For centuries, they've tried to invade. The Men of Letters stopped them every time.
So if they were Chuck's failsafe, then why were they trying to invade on an ongoing basis long before Chuck was ever dead? And going back to the time travel thing, is this reality existing concurrently with our reality? It's just several decades behind for some reason? Because Chuck died at the end of Supernatural, which would otherwise be quite a while in the future in the Winchesters timeline. But the Akrita are trying to come through now. Except that they did try to come through before. So maybe it doesn't matter when Chuck died, except that it kind of does, because they were his failsafe. 5, this is just something that bothers me. If Dean was dead this whole time and in an alternate reality and fighting a bug monster, then what was up with his narration in the promos about how the Winchester story has always been a mystery and he was gonna find out the truth about his parents?
The Winchester story. It's always been a mystery. I need to uncover the truth about my parents.
That concept has nothing to do with what the show turned out to be. And I don't think he even says those lines in the actual show. Please correct me in the comments if I am wrong. This video primarily focuses on the issues of the show connecting to the main canon of Supernatural, but there are other issues with the Winchesters in terms of like writing and pacing and characterization. But I'm not going to go into all of those. I only casually watched this season. Like, I was not taking notes along the way because I never thought I would want to do another video about the Winchesters. I thought they would do a simple mind wipe at the end and we'd all move on with our lives. But no, it was worse. Anyone who disagrees with my opinion about the Winchesters has probably hit dislike and clicked off by now, but I am going to say some nice things about the show. It does feel possible from the various interviews that I read that they had the whole season planned out from before they started filming, and even though it feels kind of rushed, like it doesn't really work, I do appreciate when showrunners actually come into their show with a plan. The actor who plays the young John Winchester, Drake Rogers, really reminds me of Sam or Jared Padalecki sometimes. Like just a similar look and very similar mannerisms, and I feel like that is very good casting. And it's an interesting choice too, because I feel like there are like very clear, obvious parallels between John and Dean, and the original Supernatural series focused more on those, but there are also parallels between John and Sam. And so casting someone who is a little bit more reminiscent of Sam, it feels intentional, and I like that. Although, speaking of casting, at one point Bobby says that it's weird to see Samuel Campbell with hair.
This is all kinds of weird. Seeing Samuel with a full head of hair.
And that's because on Supernatural, Samuel Campbell was played by Mitch Pileggi, who is bald. But this line broke my brain a little bit because he is not just bald when Bobby meets him in season 6. Samuel Campbell is bald when Dean travels back to 1973. So theoretically, at this point in canon, he should already be bald if he's going to be bald. But he's not, because he is played by a different actor, because these are just people who are pretending to be characters, so it's a weird script choice to kind of be pointing that out. Anyway, I like getting to see Jack and him doing his wave.
That's Jack.
It made me smile. The captioning on CW's website did not know how to interpret Bobby saying "idjit," so it read as "agent," and I think that is funny. And lastly, it's nice to see Jensen playing Dean again. In any context, I'm always happy for more Dean content. And he's wearing a turtleneck at one point. I don't think we ever saw him wear a turtleneck before, so that's fun. And like there was a sense of emotional satisfaction in getting to see Dean, see his parents surrounded by loved ones, and like actually have hope that maybe they will have a happy future.
Your family, did you ever find a version where they had a shot of a happy ending?
I think I did.
Although they do establish that while Mary is done with hunting, John will still be hunting, and they say pretty clearly on Supernatural, and in this show too, actually, that being a hunter pretty much always ends bloody.
The only thing worse than how it starts for a hunter
That's how it ends.
All in all, this is very much a CW product. I kind of realized what I was in for in the very first scene in the first episode when Samuel Campbell needs to draw some blood sigils for a ritual, and he does that thing that they always do where he cuts open his palm for some blood, but when he goes to like scoop up the blood or whatever, his thumb pretty much just wipes away the cut. And like, okay, CW, you couldn't have like shot that from a different angle, or maybe like done a little editing in post. Just no, you're gonna leave that as is? And he doesn't even bandage it. Once the whole twist was revealed at the end, it kind of retroactively made this whole show feel like one of those Disney side character movies, like The Lion King 1.5, where you find out how Timon and Pumbaa met, like what they were up to during the events of The Lion King. At time of filming, no one is sure if there will be a second season of The Winchesters. The showrunners hope so, but I don't want it. There was such a sense of finality at the end of season 1. Like, they really left things on a note of optimism that these characters' futures were now wide open and they weren't tied to the same dismal fates as before. And Dean had such optimism that now, like, maybe his parents could make it and his family could be happy. So it would be really disconcerting to go from that to having more episodes where the characters would inevitably have to suffer in order for the show and like plots to move forward. It would just kind of ruin things. Either way, Dean's part is done, so it feels like the entire story should be done. Please let it be done. For the record, I am not against any sort of supernatural spin-off or even a reboot down the line. I just think that it shouldn't be on the CW, even though the CW are the ones who like own the franchise. But the CW has basically developed into this network with a very specific tone and a very specific style of programming. And it kind of lends itself to very sloppy writing. And I feel like no matter what, any story that is set within the supernatural framework but done on the CW is just gonna end up being sexy teens with magic. Like, that is just inevitable.
How do we reverse the polarity of the ostium?
You can only reverse the polarity at midnight.
Can you reverse the polarity?
I'll do my best.